Hello everyone. Welcome to this panel. Obi, thanks a lot. That was the best intro we could have hoped for. Obi gave the general idea of what we're going to be talking about on this panel. So that's Federated ecash. My name is Adam van Wirdum. I work at Bitcoin Magazine. I'm joined by Casey Rodarmor. To the right, to the left for you, of course. And Eric Sirion. I'll let you guys introduce. Yeah, sorry. I'll let you guys introduce yourself briefly, just explain who you are. Casey first.
Sure, yeah. My name is Casey Rodarmor. I'm a longtime sort of minor Bitcoin developer, hanging out in the shadows, doing random things. I have a bunch of preposterous ideas that I work on, but I'm very interested in Bitcoin privacy, and I got interested in Chaumian and ecash on top of Lightning around the same time that Eric started to work on it. Yeah, and that's why I'm here. Eric?
Yeah, hey, I'm Eric. I'm a crypto anarchist and aspiring cypherpunk, and have a background in distributed systems, cryptography. I'm a Rust programmer, and yeah, around the time of last year, I think we were talking at the Miami conference actually about a new project of mine, Minimint.
Yep.
And that's how we got together, and that's how the project, when the project got started.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit of the history, and we'll go back further than 1 year.
Yep.
So Chaumian and Cash has a long history.
Very long.
Yeah, Casey, where does it come from?
Yeah, so the concept behind Chaumian Cash is, Chaumian Cash, okay, I did not get into what Chaumian Cash is yet, but it's based on something called blind signatures, which were invented by Chaum in 1982. And then in 1989, he actually started a company to try to commercialize that technology and provide a sort of private digital bank, a fully centralized private digital bank using blind signatures, and never really successfully commercialized it. But it's kind of an idea that's been there in the background for a long time. And one thing I recommend for people is look into the pre-Bitcoin history of digital privacy and digital cash technologies. There's many things like ecash in the past that are interesting ideas, weird takes, so it's definitely fertile ground to explore further.
Yeah, well Chaum, so David Chaum, who invented it, he was basically the first person ever to consider, if money is going digital, that could actually be very bad news if there's a central party that's tracking everyone's transactions. It's a nightmare, really. So he started to think about ways to make that private. So he's the first person that started to think about digital cash, really. So the first predecessor to Bitcoin, or the first, he's sort of the founding, how do you call it, the granddaddy of the whole movement, I would say. Yes, his first paper was called Transaction Systems to Make Big Brother Obsolete, so that sort of says it all.
Yeah.
So let's get into then the technical explanation. So how does this work? Do you want to take this, Eric?
Yeah, sure. Chaumian ecash is based on a super interesting technique called blind signatures. And what blind signatures allow you is, as a user, you can acquire a signature on a piece of data without showing this piece of data to the signer, which might sound a little bit weird in the beginning, but we'll get to it in a minute, why this is so important. If you still remember carbon copy paper, you can imagine it as follows. You put your message, your note, into an envelope made out of carbon copy paper. You close the envelope, give it to the signer, they sign on the envelope, it pushes through, they give back the envelope, and you can open it, taking out the message with the valid signature, but the signer never saw the message. And how we construct ecash from that is by simply taking a random message, you just choose it randomly, some big number, and also take $1, let's say, or Bitcoin. We were at Bitcoin conference. So
so back in the days, Chaum was thinking of using actual bank accounts back then, so that's why that example also makes sense.
You take any amount of money, you also take this random number, put it in the envelope, give both to the signer, to the bank, and they would keep the money, sign the envelope, and give it back to you. And the signature would mean this is worth, let's say, $1 or 1 Bitcoin or 1 Satoshi. And later on, you could go back to the bank, show to them that you have the signed piece of data, and they would give you back the amount of money you deposited. And that's how you can also build a transaction system from that.
Yeah. So the practical effect is you have a bank where you deposit, and later you can withdraw, and the deposit is totally unlinked the withdrawal is totally unlinked from the deposit. Customers show up, they have this message that proves that they deposited funds, but not who they are, when they deposited, whatever. The bank can verify its own signature, give them the funds, and has no idea any details of the customers.
Yeah, they know they really minted the cash, but they don't know which note they're getting back, which criminal number they're getting back.
Exactly.
Basically. And so the way it's sent, the way you pay is you literally send the number to someone else, right? And then that person will check immediately, essentially, with the bank in that case.
That's right.
If
they'll essentially send the number to the bank and get it reissued, so then they get their own number that the payer doesn't know. So now the funds are in their control.
Yeah, that's how double spending back then was solved. You just check it immediately with the bank that's issuing this. Now we're applying this same trick essentially to Bitcoin. So one way you can do that is you basically have a Bitcoin bank. You have someone that's custodying the Bitcoin, and you get the federated. Or sorry, we'll get to the federated part.
Right. Yeah. Building up very, very simply. So the first thing you can do is you can just build a very simple Bitcoin bank with this system. You deposit Bitcoin. And you do this blind signature magic, you put the person who deposited it, you give them back some sort of token, a blinded token, and later they can withdraw it. So this is a nice one improvement on a fully centralized, fully non-private system. Now you have a centralized system, but now it's private. People can deposit and withdraw Bitcoin without the service knowing anything about the customers.
Right. So, but we're not completely happy with this custodial.
No. Right. Yeah. It's a lot of trust, and it's not decentralized, right? You have a lot of trust in a single entity that's running it, right? So we can do better with the magic of federation.
Yeah, exactly. Especially you have to imagine, if you're running such a Bitcoin bank, you would probably want to do this as a NIM today, because the regulations around banking are very unfavorable to privacy. So you probably couldn't run an ecash bank in the open. So instead, you need to do it as a NIM, and then it's really easy to exit scam. So to solve this problem, essentially, we can split the trust over multiple people. There is this technology called federations. You might have heard of it. There is the Liquid Federation, which creates a sidechain. But you can also use federations for other things, for example, to federate ecash. And the concept behind it is, instead of holding all the Bitcoin in one wallet that is centrally controlled by one party, you can hold it in a multi-sig wallet with, for example, there are 11 people that you need 11 people out of 15 to actually move the funds. And that way it becomes much more secure, because now 11 out of 15 people have to collude against you to steal your money. And you can do the same thing to the blind signing process, to the blind signature algorithm. There are threshold blind signature algorithms for which you need 11, for example, 11 out of 15 members to collaborate to create these blind signatures and to sign your ecash tokens. And that way, we successfully split the trust over multiple people. And as Obi said, you probably have some people in your life that you kind of trust, maybe not fully. Maybe you wouldn't trust them with your life. But if you have sufficiently many of these, then you could construct such a community bank.
Yeah, and as Obi indeed mentioned, it is happening already. The Bitcoin Beach wallet would be a good example of that, where they have this distributed trust model. So there's a very good argument to be made, I think, for a system like this. It's if people are already doing if they're already custodying Bitcoin in this sense for convenience sake, well, it would be great if we can add a privacy layer to that with a system like this.
Right, and you could have all sorts of arrangements, right? You could imagine this being friends and family. You could imagine in jurisdictions with favorable regulations where it's possible to do this, public people doing this. You could imagine, darknet markets or any wild people you want running this for profit. or as like an adjunct to the existing services that you provide. And maybe you don't trust any one entity, but you trust them a little bit, and you add up a little bit of trust, and you get something that you feel comfortable putting some amount of funds into.
Or maybe even better, like in the case of darknet markets, they might be fierce competitors, and you just trust that they hate each other enough to not collaborate.
Right.
And instead, that's like with Bitcoin. We essentially trust that the miners are in a fierce competition and don't collude against us, and then they're kept in check with some economic incentives. But essentially, yeah, as long as they don't have incentives to collude, it works.
Right.
Yeah, so we had a discussion about this earlier, so I want to see, Eric, do you think that these banks need to be anons or not? Like, well, if you're using a federated system, at least some form of identity kind of matters to make sure that they're not the same individual, right?
Yeah, you need to avoid.
What are your thoughts there? Is this something that's compatible with complete anonymity in that sense, or?
It's definitely not compatible with complete anonymity, but let's say you have Twitter nyms that have a reputation that they built over years, and like it's hard to have like multiple nyms that have high engagement, let's say, and I pretty much trust that Shinobi, like that's probably his main nym. Like he probably can't run multiple accounts shitposting that much. So I would totally trust him being a member of a federation, and then if there are multiple such people, then I could totally imagine a federation of nyms, and I really want to see this, like a cypherpunk federation, which is global, where you don't have like these second-party trust relationships, but it's still good enough, like it gives you a lot of privacy, and hopefully they won't exit scam. But on the other hand, there is this need for community banking, which Obi described, and I think there federated ecash can also play an important role in local communities. Because currently what you're seeing with Bitcoin Beach Wallet, Galoy, it's super cool, I love it. But ideally, if we want to deploy this at a scale, you don't want your neighbor to know what you're spending your money on. And that's also a problem federated ecash is solving.
Okay, so did you want to add something that, like, who would be the ideal federation members, or how do you envision this?
Well,
who's going to adopt this in your view?
Right, the ideal federation members are just people who have something to lose if they collude against the federation. And that can be anybody. That can be Twitter nyms, that can be people who run businesses, people you know personally. Yeah, and I was just going to say that like this isn't compatible with full anonymity, but it is compatible with pseudonymity.
Do we agree, by the way, this is probably the most important trade-off for systems like this. So we're getting great privacy, but regardless of your setup, there is some level of trust involved one way or another. Is this the main trade-off in your view?
Definitely. Like you're trading trust for privacy in that sense. But you're not only trading it for privacy, you're also trading it for convenience.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is that like, when you use somebody else's computer, you don't have to set it up yourself. So that's another trade-off, right? You're trusting people, but you also are trading off like technical difficulty versus trust.
And like that's how I see it. We essentially Trojan horse privacy into Bitcoin that way. Like if we can make this so convenient that everyone wants to use it, then we will automatically give people more privacy, and will also make it the natural thing to do. Like not only criminals use the private Bitcoin technology then, because currently, like if you're using CoinJoins, then you have the big problem. All exchanges will flag you and will freeze your funds. But if everyone is using this out of convenience, there's no reason to do this. Like they can't. You have like strength in numbers.
Eric, is this system at least auditable? Can you know for sure that there's not more ecash issued than the Federation has Bitcoin in reserve?
That's the one big problem, I'd say. Like you can't audit such a system because it provides such great anonymity that like the Federation never knows which tokens are already spent, which aren't. You have this all the tokens in your anonymity set, but it also means you cannot generate a proof that you have a certain amount of funds for the issued ecash tokens, because you could not tell which ones to remove from the proof if you were doing something like the exchanges do, or some exchanges do, like proof of funds. yeah, you fully trust the Federation in that sense.
Yeah, I know we can't peer into the future and we can't, you know, we can't figure out what people will figure out later.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to ask you, is there any sort of plausible scenario that in the future it might be audible in one way or another, or is this just completely off the table in your view?
I mean, I thought about this for a long time, and what I came up with in the end was really close to the zero coin design.
Yeah.
And I think in any design where you have auditability, you require the users that want to spend money to sync some sort of blockchain or to sync some sort of global state to hide in. And that makes it not as convenient. Like with the current federated ecash system, you only need to care about your own ecash tokens, which is like small pieces of data which fits onto any phone. But as soon as you add the auditability, it becomes much more cumbersome to run a node. And then we probably can't Trojan horse privacy into Bitcoin because people won't run it.
One topic we haven't mentioned yet is the vision for integrating these kinds of systems, the federated Chaumian systems, with Lightning.
Right.
That's part of your project, right, Eric?
Yeah,
or
definitely.
Casey wants.
Well,
you
just-
seem eager to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Go.
say, like,
Yeah.
we touched on the privacy of the depositors have from the people running the Federation. The people who run the Federation don't know anything about the depositors. The nice thing is that when you pair the system with Lightning, when users are depositing via Lightning and making payments and withdrawing via Lightning, you get very good privacy from outside observers. So to the point of view of an outside observer, somebody who's trying to surveil the Lightning network and surveil the chain, one of these Chaumian federated mints has a bunch of channels, right? And maybe you can observe, like through, like, you know, analysis, you can see, like, okay, how the balances are changing, maybe get some ideas of payments that are being made or whatever. But because so many users are using this one Lightning node and are essentially sharing all of these channels, an outside observer gets very little information about the actual activities or identity of the customers. It's essentially like one big giant coin join with this big shared Lightning node that is very hard to surveil and draw any conclusions about. So that's an important part about where the system gets its sort of external privacy.
It definitely say that's a part of it, but the original intent for integrating Lightning was actually to not make this like one federation to rule them all, because that would be enormously a centralizing force, because only people inside the federation can pay each other with ecash tokens. So if you don't have the Lightning integration, everyone would want to be in the same big ecash federation, and that might become a systemic risk to Bitcoin. But if you can integrate Lightning, and I'm currently working on this, and I already have the outgoing Lightning integration, the incoming is currently being worked on, then you suddenly just have a Lightning wallet, like a really private federated Lightning wallet, and can interact with any other Lightning service, may it be another federated ecash mint, or like someone running their own Lightning node, or even like centralized services like Wallet of Satoshi. Like you're fully interoperable with the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, you can think of these, you know, federated mints as being sort of functionally equivalent to banks, and then Lightning being the settlement network, which makes it very easy to move between them very quickly.
And instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, this does seem to bring, for me, this does seem to bring up like a bit of a tension maybe. So you're basically suggesting that you would prefer these federated mints to not be too large, and I guess the main risk of that is the custodial risk again? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, but then the trade-off there is, I think for optimal privacy, you actually want very large, you know.
That's right, to increase the size of the anonymity set.
Yeah, so there seems to be some kind of tension there going on.
Yeah, I mean, you just want, like, everybody has some price at which they will defect. I don't know, maybe not everybody. And you just don't want to hit that price with like a single federation with like a giant pot of gold. So yeah, there's tension. But yeah, as the more people you have on the federation, the more transactions you have, the better privacy you get. But probably you don't need to have that many users to have very good privacy, right? Like if it's reasonably popular, if it's making lots of transactions pretty much continuously, you're going to get pretty good privacy, and there can probably
that might require a lot of users, right? Like, what do you have any ballpark? Like, at what point do you have enough big enough privacy pool? Sorry, what do you call it?
An anonymity set. Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, you kind of want there to be like constant transactions, right? As long as there's like a constant transactions and you have a hard time doing any sort of timing attack. And I don't know how many users that is. If Lightning is broadly adopted, maybe you don't need that many users at all.
Yeah, this ties into our next subject, and maybe we're sort of skipping ahead. But so, what are there weaknesses from a privacy perspective? So you mentioned timing attack. Maybe there's someone in the room that doesn't know what it is. I doubt it in this room, but okay, very quickly explain what a timing attack is.
A timing attack would be when you observe an on-chain deposit, and then you're also surveilling the Lightning network, and so you, through watching changing channel balances, you see an outgoing payment from the Federation, right? You see deposit on-chain to the Federation, then you see an outgoing deposit or an outgoing Lightning transaction from the Federation. So then from that, you might surmise that the deposit was the same person who made the outgoing payment, right?
Yeah, that's especially a problem if you want to use such a federation for tumbling, because we didn't go into this yet. We mainly presented this as a way to make payments, but you can also use it to tumble Bitcoins and, for example, to recycle toxic change you got from coin joins.
Right.
There are so many possibilities to use this technology, and for that you'd have to wait for like a reasonable period of time that other operations happen and that you have some anonymity set. And like a second weakness, I'd say, is in the current implementation. It's not a theoretical weakness, more a practical one. To make the system efficient, we're using multiple amount denominations. Like, let's imagine we had only 1 Satoshi tokens and wanted to send the whole Bitcoin, then we'd have to assign like 100 million random data strings, and that would take a long time, like even on modern computers. So what we do instead is we introduce like tokens that are worth 1 Satoshi, 10 Satoshi, 100 Satoshi, and so on. So that reduces our anonymity set per denomination. But in the end, I believe if all the users of the Federation have roughly the same amount of money, then it's still good enough. Like the problem is if you're the rich dude in the Federation and the only one owning like the 1 Bitcoin tokens, that would be problematic. But you can see this. Like you can create a Federation and ask, hey, how many tokens did you issue of this denomination? And if you see there's no one issuing 1 Bitcoin tokens, then you just take the like 0.01 Bitcoin tokens and issue 100 of them. And then you got your privacy back.
Right.
So Eric, your specific project is called Minimint.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the status of that? How far are you with that?
Like it's currently a research project. I tested on rec tests. I definitely wouldn't put any main chain funds on it yet, but I'm planning to have it ready for like an early alpha release in October for Hackers Congress Indianapolis. I want to pay my coffee with it, and I did this last year, but it was kind of a hack because I used the rec test Bitcoin in the Federation to trigger a payment from a Lightning node which was operating on mainnet, so that's kind of cheating. But this year I want to have real Bitcoin in there, and I have to put my skin into the game, dog food this, and then it will become awesome.
Has there been any interest from other projects to integrate this, or not yet?
I mean, not really yet. I mean, it's in the early stages. I got a lot of support, like definitely. I got a lot of support from Wasabi people, like we were discussing the crypto behind it, and a lot of outreach, but from like a more user-facing point of view, not really yet, because it doesn't make sense. Like currently, I'm still working on the deep tech behind it, and not on any user-facing apps, but this time will definitely come.
One thing to mention is that it's written in Rust, so if you like Rust, you're looking for a Rust Bitcoin project to contribute to. Selling point, you know?
I was just going to say, what do you need at this point? Developers, that's the main thing?
Yeah, definitely. Like I need Rust developers to build the main thing, like the server component and also the client library. And what I'm currently planning on is building a WebAssembly-based client where I compile the client library for Federated ecash into WebAssembly, and then someone could build like a React interface to it, and so it's easier to use. Just put it on your phone, like scan QR codes. That would be awesome. So if anyone has any knowledge about this stuff, I don't. Like I'm really a backend guy. I'm a Rust developer, but I'd love to cooperate.
We've hinted at it at several points throughout this panel, but ecash is of course not the only privacy tool for Bitcoin. People are working on different solutions to increase privacy. What's the vision for how does Federated ecash fit into a broader picture for?
Yeah, I mean, so the ideal world would be one where lots of people use solutions like Federated ecash to do these private L2 payments. And then all of the on-chain payments, all of the L1, or a lot of the L1 activity is just massive coin joins, right? It's just massive, like the federation needs to like get some coins and send it to another federation, or another, like somebody needs to make an off-chain or an on-chain withdrawal, and they just all do it through giant coin joins, and sort of like non-settlement payments all happen through these private L2 mechanisms.
Yeah. Maybe one thing to add there, coin joins are currently not great because you have all these different denominations, and if you want to pay a certain amount, then that's a really weird amount,
right.
And this will stick out. But if we were doing all the commerce on layer 2, then we could have common denominations, or like on the base layer, and that makes a coin join so much more efficient. And I can imagine a future where every spend is a coin join. That's the future I'm working for. Like,
yeah.
I want to see this.
All right. Well, guys, we're out of time. So thanks a lot for doing this with me.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank you,
everyone,
everybody.
for coming. This is the last talk here. So this room, that was it. Thanks.